After drinking some of Lepage's delectable coffee and being helped to the sugar by Napoleon's fingers instead of silver tongs, we proceeded to the carriage, which was in waiting. Madame Bertrand led the way, carrying her baby, little Arthur, followed by my mother, my sister, and myself, and General Gorgot. On being seated, the signal was given, the whip applied to the spirited Cape steeds, and away they tore. First on one side of the track, for a road there was none, and then on the other, Madame Bertrand screaming with all her power for Archambault to stop, but it was not until a check was put to the velocity of the carriage by its coming in contact with a large gumwood tree that we had any chance of being heard. At length the door was open, and out we scrambled, up to our knees in mud, the night being wet and foggy. We had nearly a mile to walk through this filthy road to Deadwood, and the poor Countess all the while carrying her infant, who would not be pacified with any other nurse. I shall never forget the figure we cut on arriving at Mr. Bayard's quarters, where we were provided with dry clothes, nor the ludicrous appearance of Madame Bertrand, habited in one of Mrs. Baird's dresses, which was half a yard too short, much too small in every way. Mrs. Baird being remarkably petite, while the Countess was renommée for her tall and graceful stature. But in spite of our adventure in contretemps, we had a very merry ball, and the party did not separate until long after the booming guns from the forts around announced the break of day. We cared little for our walk home through the mist and rain, and we knew that at arriving at the Grand Marshal's cottage, we should be refreshed by a good breakfast and comfortable beds. Napoleon complimented me on my dancing and appearance at the ball, which he had heard were much admired, and also told me I was considered very like Baroness Sturmer and might be mistaken for her younger sister. I was flattered at the resemblance, as I thought her the prettiest woman I had ever seen. I had been to a breakfast given to Lord Amherst, the British ambassador to the Chinese Empire, on board the Newcastle, where this fete was held, the entertainers being Sir Pulteney and Lady Malcolm. On next visiting Longwood, I was surprised and vexed to find that the Emperor had heard an account of the party from other lips than mine, as I was anxious to forestall the narration of the exploits of a certain hoydenish young lady, namely myself. But he had received a faithful detail of them from Dr. O'Meara. He pretended to scold and take me to task for being such a petite fool, little crazy person, and said he hoped the account were not true. He then began recapitulating the offenses of which I had been guilty to my father, stating that I had teased and locked up pretty little Miss P, while the ladies were being whipped over the side of the frigate to return to the shore, and it was not until we had nearly reached the fort that the fair lady's absence was perceived, when, it being inconvenient to return the barge, it was proposed to Captain G, one of the party, and a great admirer of the young lady, that he should proceed to the frigate and rescue the terrified girl. Napoleon said, Miss Betsy must be punished for being so naughty. N'est-ce pas, Balcombe? Turning to my father, whom he requested to set me a task to be repeated to him on my next visit. Such a request my father was, of course, delighted to put into execution, being only too happy to have an excuse to make me study. On hearing what was in store for me, I assured him I had been sufficiently punished already for my cruelty to Miss P, having been really frightened out of my little wits by the roaring of the cannon from every fort which overhung the bay, and from all the men of war stationed to the harbor to salute Lord Amherst on his landing. I also mentioned the scolding I had received from Lady Lowe, who kept desiring me to use my reason and not to be so childish. Napoleon did not lose the opportunity of attacking Lady Lowe, though at my expense, and said he wondered at her ladyship's want of perception in giving me credit for what I never possessed. I amused Bonaparte that day by my ecstasies in describing the impression the courtier-like manner and the charming address of Lord Amherst had made on me. He seemed pleased at my entertaining the same idea as himself, and said, the ambassador must have been fascinating to have impressed your youthful Well, fancy. From the strict surveillance exercised over the emperor, the inconveniences suffered by his suite were on many occasions extremely annoying, and I quote the following as an instance. My sister and I were constantly in the habit of staying with Madame Bertrand, who kindly volunteered during my long visits to her to superintend my studies. Upon one occasion, at her request, I attempted to sing a little French romance composed by Hortense, daughter of the Empress Josephine, entitled Le Départ de Styrian. This song had been sent to her the preceding evening by Napoleon, who was anxious to hear it and intimated that he should come for that purpose. He came according to promise, but was not only disappointed but angry at the discordant sounds that issued from the piano, which from damp and disuse had acquired tones very like those of a broken-down hurdy-gurdy. The only person on the island capable of remedying the defects of the instrument was Mr. Guinness, bandmaster on board the General Kidd, then lying in the St. James Harbor. Mr. Guinness, who at the request of the Countess was summoned by my father for the purpose, was on the point of leaving the side of the ship when an order from the governor desired him to stay where he was. Napoleon expressed a wish to see a boa constrictor brought by Captain Murray Maxwell to the island. I had described its gorging a goat and the extraordinary appearance it presented after such a meal. The horns of the unfortunate animal, which had been put alive into the cage, seemed as if they must protrude through the snake's skin. The emperor observed that he thought, from what he had heard, that the Marquess de M. Montigny was quantity of food he consumed must resemble a boa constrictor. I understood that it was not thought advisable to comply with the emperor's wish to have the monster conveyed to Longwood.